When the McLaren F1 team counts on speed, they count on Dropbox Dash. Dash finds what you need fast across all your work apps so you can focus on what matters. Learn more at dropbox.com/McLaren F1.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at Polestar.com.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts.
Ray Grady, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you. Good to be here, John.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the Chicago area. I'm Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about best practices in scaling your freelance and contract workforces. This is a super interesting topic to me. You know, I am an HR guy. You know, I'm a professor and a researcher in that space. So it's something that I think about and look at all the time anyways, but I also do consulting in the space. And so, you know, as I track the contingent workforce and I look at, you know, the rise of the gig economy, for example, and how that's grown over the last couple of decades, it's just super fascinating to see where this has been going and where it appears to be going in the coming years. So I'm thrilled to have the chance to sit down with you because this is what you are all about. This is what your company does, and to get the ground floor on what the latest trends are, I think will be super helpful for both me and for my audience. To get started, I wanted to share Ray's bio with everybody. Ray Grady, the CEO of Worksuite, brings over 20 years of experience in scaling high-growth B2B organizations, leading the company in designing and executing Worksuite's vision, strategy, growth plans, and company operations. Prior to joining Worksuite, Ray held several executive positions, including CEO of Conexiom and Senior Vice President and COO of GM of B2B Commerce at Salesforce. Previously, Ray was President and COO of CloudCraze, where he led the company through its 2018 acquisition by Salesforce. Ray lives in Chicago area with his family, and in his free time, he likes to play golf poorly and wake surf. I also like to play golf poorly, as well as many other sports that I play poorly. Anyways, great to have you. Anything you would like to add by way of your background or personal context before we dive in further?
No, I think, John, that was great. No, I'm excited to talk about, you know, what I've been at Worksuite now a little over 6 months. So, you know, relatively new to the space, but coming up to speed pretty quickly. And it's like you said earlier, it's a dynamic space, and there are lots of things that are forcing customers to think about their labor and their workforce differently. And I think we're in an interesting place at the right time.
Yeah. Well, It's so interesting when we just think about the labor force and how things have been shifting. I mean, certainly in recent years, as we think just like pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, that shift is dramatic. But if you go back in time, just like a couple decades to now, I mean, the shift has been tremendous. So with all that in mind, we don't have to get into like all the whole historical context, but why don't you lay out for us some of the trends that WorkSuite is currently seeing in the freelance market?
Well, we're seeing it's a huge market, right? It's a huge market, and it's a huge global market. I mean, in North America alone, we think up to 60% of the U.S. workforce is contract or freelance in nature, and that number is growing year over year. We think it's growing for logical reasons. I think future of work from home, culturally, different generations thinking about work differently than previous generations, I think are all leading to this kind of growth and working where you want, living the life you want. And freelance can be, a real enabler of that. So I'd say, one of the biggest trends that we're seeing is one, companies thinking about freelance.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. With school out, summer is the perfect time to teach our kids real-world money skills they'll use forever. Greenlight is a debit card and the #1 family finance and safety app used by millions of families, helping kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send their kids money and track their spending and saving, while kids build money confidence and skills in fun ways. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify. That's greenlight.com/Spotify.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Contract, influencer, whatever industry they're in, as part of an overall talent acquisition and retention strategy. So historically, we didn't see heads of HR, chief people officers really engage with contract or freelance. It was kind of a separate thing on the outside. Now we're seeing companies think about them holistically. I was just on with a large global brand today, and she was talking about her full-time group. She was talking about the vendor management component and then the freelancer component, and how she can think about all these things together. Like one of the largest, travel hospitality brands in the world thinking that way. And we're starting to see, more and more companies think that way. We're starting to see companies of scale building their entire business model around freelance or contract only. So if you look at a lot of editorial businesses or content-driven businesses, there is no real full-time staff. It's all delivered via freelance, and we're starting to see that trend grow globally as well. And then I'd also say, I talked about it, I mentioned it earlier, the growth in influencer, and how brands are using influencers to market their brand today. I mean, historically, maybe it was a cutting edge brand and they were doing it just to kind of get the word out. Now it is a real marketing channel for every brand, B2B, B2C, et cetera. And obviously, when you start to look at engaging an influencer, that person could be a one-person show, or he or she could have a team of people behind them. So the concepts of managing a contract or legal are more pronounced in that type of environment. So those are some trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, yeah. And you point to both sides of the equation. So you have the employer side and you have the labor side, and both sides are leaning into this. So I think, I mean, I don't want to overstate the generational effect here, because certainly there are folks from all generations that are leaning into the freelancer space, that like to have that lifestyle. But particularly for like younger millennials and Gen Z, it seems like there's a disproportionate number of workers from those generational cohorts that are really embracing the freelance worker lifestyle. They just like the freedom, they like the flexibility. They're not necessarily buying into kind of the traditional corporate, worker kind of mentality, all of that, right? They don't buy into the traditional kind of, buy a house and live in the suburbs and like all those kind of societal norms. They're kind of disrupting some of that. So they just don't buy into it and they're kind of doing their own thing, right? So you have that on the worker side, but employers are seeing the huge value of it because, of course, it provides more flexibility to organizations. It's cheaper usually in terms of you don't have the healthcare costs and the other benefits. You don't have some of the other expenses related to full-time employees. And so if there's the desire on both sides to have more freelance workers, there's no wonder why we see the rise in more freelance workers. So it's really interesting. And you noted even, like editorial types of jobs and content creation types of jobs that are moving so dramatically in this direction. And we can hem and haw over it. And some people are saying it's the demise of, the newspapers or whatever. That's a debate that we could have, but it's also just the reality of what's happening. So, ultimately we just, that's a different conversation to have that debate. But ultimately, if we're just talking about the work side of it, it's what's happening and we have to figure out what we're going to do with it. Okay. So with all of that, kind of as a foundational context, can you tell us more about some of the data that you've just released? Worksuite just released and issued some data around the number of freelancers from 2023 versus 2024. I think your data showed that it had doubled from H123 to H224. What do you think are some of the best practices that organizations should follow as they're managing and scaling that freelance and contract workforce?
Yeah, so I think, we have seen interesting trends. We'd seen an increase in, and not surprisingly, if you look at high tech, if you look at creative services, if you look at event services, if you look gaming, we're seeing an increase in labor that's shifting more towards that freelancer year-over-year growth. But as it relates to best practices, it's really, you have to deliver. What we're seeing is historically people have maybe used disparate systems to manage a freelancer network. So what do I mean by that? So one, they may onboard them and they may ensure worker classification and compliance either through an outsourced entity or through a homegrown system. They may manage tasks in Asana or projects in Asana. They may manage contracts in a contract management lifecycle application. They may onboard these people through a procurement application, which I've seen in the past, like a Reba, be it a freelancer or an influencer through a traditional. They may pay them through their accounts payable system, and when you do that, you have like these really, you're offering up applications or processes that are not purpose built for the freelancer or for the influencer. And as such, you're delivering a very poor experience. And if you're competing for the best labor, and oftentimes, these freelancers, they have the ability to work however they want and where they want, and they're in high demand. So what we think of best practice is, if you look at your onboarding experience for an employee, that's very purposeful, and it's very much on brand, and it's trying to deliver the ethos of the brand to that employee. We're seeing companies take a step back and mirror that. You obviously don't want to marry your full-time employees with your freelancers or with influencers who are coming in episodically, but you do want to deliver a very seamless and elegant experience to ensure that they're being classified correctly, to ensure that they're being onboarded appropriately, that they're gathering their bank information in an intelligent and easy way, that they're being paid when they want, in the currency in which they want, and they're being assigned tasks all in one application. So we're seeing this chunking up of disparate applications into one, and thankfully we have the ability to deliver that to our customers.
Yeah. You just mentioned a whole bunch of the technical logistical pieces that I think we definitely need to be thinking about. So your company helps with that, which I think is super important to consider and super helpful. You also mentioned something that I think is also important is how we connect our kind of typical quote unquote regular workforce, our full-time and part-time employees who are considered employees of the organization, versus the freelance contingent workforce working with our organization. And especially if we have an increasing number of the workers in our organization being freelancers, we have to think carefully about that strategy. We have to think about how do we create a sense of culture and community? How do we create like synergies and innovation within our organization when we have these ebbs and flows of freelancers moving in and out of the ecosystem with our full-time and part-time people? I don't have any good answers to that. It obviously depends on the organization. It depends on the level to which you're utilizing contingent workers. But these are really important questions. I mean, you really have to think carefully about it. And to the extent you're really leveraging the freelance market, it changes, I think, the equation on like what you're doing there. I've seen many organizations who've really leaned heavily into the freelance market who haven't thought about these questions, and it's come back to bite them big time. So, any thoughts on that? Like how to navigate that?
Yeah, I think one, it's if in fact companies are going to make a strategic decision to invest in their own curated freelancer network, and hey, this is going to be a big part of our overall talent acquisition strategy and how we're going to deliver tasks, projects, to the marketplace. It's being thoughtful and mindful on how to brand that, right? So we have some customers who, when they are out and they're talking about opportunities and they're talking about working for their company, they'll have an engaging section of their website that's speaking specifically to a gig worker or to a freelancer or to an influencer, right? And it's branded appropriately, and they're giving a value proposition around the company, just like they would give it to a full-time employee. And they're doing that because, one, they want to ensure that they're getting the best talent, but then they also, once they bring them in and they've identified the opportunity, they want to curate and manage that experience to where, if you have a great copywriter writing for you, you want to keep that person engaged. And maybe you're, Ziff Davis, or you have a lot of different periodicals that you can write for underneath one major brand. You want to keep that person kind of in a walled garden, to where if we can keep her engaged, excited about the opportunities, excited about the work, she's going to stick within, the business, right? So she may not be a full-time person. She may bounce around from application to application, periodical to periodical, whatever the case may be. But it's also, you're not letting them go. You're not just throwing them back into a pool and bringing new people in, because then there's no continuity, to your point of, building culture and building kind of a brand within that freelancer community. So we're seeing companies, being really mindful in how they're going to identify and attract the talent and then kind of manage the talent themselves, and not through a third-party vendor management system, a third-party marketplace, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's right. Those are some really great insights and some tips that we should be considering. So as we move forward, another thing we need to think about is the impact of AI on all of this. So deep machine learning, artificial intelligence. I suppose even if we can get beyond that and just think about technological innovation generally and advanced robotics, et cetera, like basically technological disruption and displacement of jobs, more broadly, we can think about displacement and layoffs, et cetera, right? And how it's going to be taking over jobs. That changes the whole labor market, right? So we've been talking about how freelancers and gig workers are changing the labor market. Now we have this other component that we've been seeing accelerate in recent years due to large language models, ChatGPT, et cetera. That's disrupting the labor market. How do you see these two pieces coinciding, as we think about freelancers versus AI and the traditional kind of labor market model?
Yeah, I think there's still some things to get kind of flushed out there. I think we're still in the early innings of losing significant part of our labor pool to autonomous agents, AIs, on top of a large language model. But what we're seeing, I'm seeing it in my own business, running my own company, and then within my customers, people are using these autonomous agents to just be more purposeful, personalized, and more efficient in getting their day in and day out task completed, right? So I've not seen a wholesale swap out of people for a bot, as an example. But what I do see is my internal marketing team being way more efficient in a thought piece or a blog post or something to that effect, because they can leverage these large language models to help them kind of jumpstart or get a piece of content going. I can promote code into production faster by leveraging tooling to get through my QA process. I can develop code faster because I can have, a co-pilot with my engineering team. So I'm seeing just greater efficiency gains coming from leveraging large language models and wholesale replacement of functions. Now, it's still the early innings of AI. I think it's going to be the most disruptive piece of technology in my lifetime, and I'm old, right? I saw the birth of the browser, and the birth of the internet, and I still think it's going to be. I think it's going to be bigger than that. I think we're in kind of a trough of disillusionment a little bit right now, whereas companies overinvested, and maybe they're not really finding that business application. It's going to bounce back around pretty quickly. So we'll see which jobs are actually, in fact, eliminated. But I think, like any other technological trend, if there are jobs eliminated, there'll be new jobs created, and it's going to be a net positive, not a net negative. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and the interplay, between, displacement of entire jobs or even careers, like early days of ChatGPT. That was like the Chicken Little, the sky is falling, we're going to lose all these jobs. And even at the time, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's possible, but what I was thinking even at the time was much more likely is what we're going to see is a lot of jobs that are just going to simply have displaced tasks. Right. And for most of us, it's going to be the types of things we don't want to do anyways. So, right. Like the repetitive types of things, the mind-numbing, types of boring things that we don't want to do anyways, that we would love to be more productive at and efficient at anyways. And there's always going to be some displacement. And every time we have some new technology, it helps us to do things more efficiently, faster, more effectively, whatever, right? And so this is just another tool to do that. Will there eventually be some replacement of workers and some displacement of jobs, et cetera? Sure. But mostly we're talking about tasks. We're talking about certain types of elements of jobs that are going to be displaced largely at this point. But that doesn't just apply to full-time workers or part-time workers, full-time, part-time employees at organizations. It applies to freelancers too. So sure. Like how have you seen this play out? So if I'm a freelance worker and now all of a sudden, I can 10x my output as a freelancer because I learn how to leverage AI, what does that mean for me in my ability to, be competitive in the freelancer space, in my ability to earn a living, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, to me, it's a tremendous, and what we're seeing, and again, it's still early, but we do see this in pockets. It's a tremendous boon to the freelancer because she can be much more productive and she can cut across multiple customers and get the same quality of work done that maybe she was just doing with one brand or one company or one division, initially, right? So now if you're in copy, you can be a lot more productive. If you're in creative design, you can be a lot more productive. And if you're leveraging these tools intelligently. So we're seeing it as a real benefit to the freelancer and the contractor because they can kind of expand their reach and get more work done.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about this acceleration piece. The pandemic certainly helped us accelerate into the adoption of many of these disruptive technologies. Certainly, there were organizations already leaning into many of these disruptions pre-pandemic. We just saw the wide-scale societal adoption of many of these disruptions because of the pandemic. It necessitated it, but it launched us into the future of work. So I think many people would agree that where we thought, maybe what we thought was 10 years down the line, now all of a sudden we leapfrogged, 5 years into the future because of the pandemic or something like that, right? How do you see this in terms of like remote work and where you see companies going, either right or wrong, in relation to embracing new employment models and flexible work arrangements, both in relation to, this freelance market and just labor market generally?
I think it's going to be you're going to have to meet the worker where they are. Meaning, if I'm a great data scientist and I don't want to work for one particular company and I want to do really cool work and I want to do it on my own terms, companies have to be mindful of that. And they have to have a talent acquisition strategy and a task deployment and a project management methodology to engage with someone like me. If I'm a full-time data scientist and I want to work for a company because I want to go into the office 3 or 4 days a week and I want to collaborate with my teammates, the company's going to have to be mindful there and have the right kind of talent acquisition and retention strategy there. So I think companies thinking that, unfortunately, they're going to dictate terms to the labor pool, I don't think that's the right strategy, right? I think it's going to be, what's our vision? What are our values? What's our purpose? What are we trying to do as a company? And then engage with people the way in which they want to be engaged so you can deliver the best product and services to the marketplace, be it freelance, full-time, in office, fully remote, hybrid, etc.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. And it's this tension because a lot of organizations, a lot of employers feel like they do get to dictate, and to some extent they do. I mean, it's the ebb and flow of the labor market, supply demand issues, and we all saw, a year and a half ago, it was certainly the worker side had all of the leverage, and now the employer side has a little bit more leverage. But I think as we really think long term, I totally agree with you. I think the worker side is going to have more leverage than the employer side, and so I think we really do need to think about, when we think about things like return to office mandates, like these blanket mandates, in some cases, are they necessary? Maybe, I don't know every company and every company situation, but in some cases they may be necessary. But my guess is in most cases they're not. In most cases, they're probably just the preference of the CEO or the particular executive. And so we probably usually need to take more of a nuanced approach, and we probably need to meet the labor market where it's at, like you just said, and particularly freelancers.
I mean, there are certain times, in a particular project or task where you have to get together with your teammates, and I think you should have an ability. One should have the ability to do that. And then, if there are other times where it doesn't matter where you are, but so long as you're delivering the tasks or the projects, so be it. You can live wherever you want and do the work you want. So I think, again, so long as businesses are mindful of that, and it's at the end of the day, it's just going to it's a greater burden on the manager to ensure that they're understanding what their people are doing, that their people are engaged, that their people are happy, be it freelance or full-time, and they're giving them the opportunity to live the life they want as they deliver what they're supposed to deliver for that business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ray, this has just been a great conversation. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your team, where they can find more resources, etc., and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Sure. Yeah. So, you come to worksuite.com. You can find us. You can find me, Ray Grady, on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I try to be pretty active, not only talking about what we're doing at Worksuite, but also, referencing interesting third-party materials from lots of folks in the marketplace that are writing about this and that are kind of excited about the freelancer economy. So, I'd ask if you want to just learn more about the space, not just more about Worksuite, come to us, read our blog and read our content, because we're trying to be educational, as this is a relatively newer category that we're trying to get people to understand and get excited about. And then I'd say if in fact you are as a business, be it mid-market or large businesses, we serve them all. If you're excited about understanding how building your own proprietary freelancer network or gig economy or tapping into an influencer economy that maybe you didn't think you had to before, would love to share that information with you. So, would love to, if folks want to learn more, reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on our homepage. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today about the space. It was fun, Jonathan. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray. It's just been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Ray can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.